Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. His phone lit up between us, and I saw her name first. Claire. He grinned before he even read the message. His thumb hovered over the screen like this was the best part of his night. I watched him forget I was right there beside him. I'm Emily, 32, and I was counting another woman's notifications. Not my proudest hobby, I know. But once you notice a name on your partner's screen, you can't unsee it. It's like your brain pins it there and waits for the next buzz. I already knew Claire's name, I just didn't know her place yet. Something funny, I asked, eyes on the TV, not on him. The show blurred into noise and his quiet laugh cut through it. Just Claire, he said, casual, like he was saying weather. The Bike Girls. That tiny label worked on me the first time, and he knew it. He typed fast, pausing only to smirk at whatever she wrote back. I stared at his reflection in the black edge of the screen. You know that feeling when you're technically in the room, but not really there? That's where I was sitting on our couch that night. Next to my husband, and inside my own head at the same time. Another message came in, and this one made him snort. He tilted the phone slightly away, not enough to hide it fully. My chest tightened in that stupid, obvious way, like I'd swallowed a fist. What did she say? I pushed my voice light, teasing, fake calm. He shrugged and shifted, the phone half buried under his thigh. You still checking on her, or is this something else now? I tried to make it a joke, and it came out stiff. She wiped out pretty hard, remember, he muttered, eyes back on the screen. She's nervous writing again, I'm just helping her feel better. The word just scraped over me like sandpaper, thin but everywhere. The phone buzzed again, louder in my head than in the room. Let me see, I reached out, palm open, pretending this was normal. He hesitated for 1 second, and that second hit me hardest. Then he placed the phone in my hand, too fast, too cheerful. My fingers closed around more than plastic in that moment. The chat was right there, long and crowded, scrolling back for days. Little bubbles stacked on top of each other, like they never ran out. Her latest message sat at the bottom. I didn't wobble today, are you proud of me? With a smile. My stomach dipped because I knew exactly how he responded. His reply glowed under it. Of course I'm proud, you're killing it, with a stupid little heart. I almost laughed honestly because it felt like some high school thing. Then I scrolled up and the joke died in my throat. There was a whole world up there that I hadn't seen. They had nicknames for the crash, little jokes about her dramatic fall. He reminded her to ice her knee, to text if it hurt more. She told him about her day at work, line after line after line. He answered with memes and stories and patient encouragement. The kind of patience I thought was ours, not public property. How often are you two talking? I kept my eyes on the screen. Not that much, he said, shifting closer, arm brushing my shoulder. It looks like a lot, I whispered, thumb froze in mid-scroll. Timestamps hit me in the face. Morning, lunch, late night, all the hours I thought were quiet. I mean, it's not serious, he added, voice tighter now. She's just been through a rough patch, the fall freaked her out. So you're her emotional support now? I looked up, finally meeting his eyes. He flinched, very slight, like a muscle twitch he hoped I missed. I caught it and stored it because this is how doubt starts. Further up, my name popped out of the thread. Emily thinks you're sweet for helping, he had written once. That line stabbed harder than the others because it used my trust. She replied, your wife sounds nice, tell her I'm grateful. I stared at it, feeling anything but nice right then. I scrolled higher and saw the day they first exchanged numbers. Her messages were nervous and thankful, full of hope I'm not bothering. He told her to relax, that he didn't mind at all. He added, happy to help you get back on the bike. I could almost hear his warm voice in those words, aimed at her. You're making that face, he said, fingers drumming on his knee. What face, I asked, though I knew exactly which one he meant. The one where you're already mad, and I haven't done anything wrong. His laugh landed flat between us, heavy instead of light. I set the phone on my lap, screen still blazing with Claire. I'm not stupid, I breathed out slow, trying to steady myself. This is not just checking in on someone who fell. It started there, he insisted, rubbing his temples with forced patience. She got scared to ride again, and I stepped up, that's all. He left out the part where he forgot to step back. I pushed the phone toward him. Do you tell her this much about your day every time? He glanced at the screen and shrugged, shoulders GHT against his neck. It's easier to talk to someone who doesn't already know my every move. That one sentence landed harder than any notification ever could. I felt my ears burn, that hot rush of embarrassment and anger. I wanted to defend myself, to argue I wasn't some prison guard. Instead, I heard myself ask, is there anything here you don't want me seeing? He met my eyes too fast, which is almost as bad as looking away. No, he answered, and the word hung there thin as thread. I picked up the phone again, thumb hovering over the search bar. I thought about typing my own name, seeing every time I came up. I didn't do it, not that night. I already felt like I was rummaging through drawers that should be mine. Funny how you can feel like a thief in your own living room. He took the phone back, gentle, like he was afraid I'd drop it. I'll cool it on the texting if it bothers you, he offered. The offer sounded more like a favor than basic respect. I nodded anyway because I was tired and I wanted the night over. Wanting peace and actually having it are very different things. We turned the TV up and pretended to watch, bodies lined up neatly. He rested his hand on my leg, warm, familiar, practiced. I let it stay there because pulling away would start another fight. His phone vibrated once more, soft against the cushion near his hip. He didn't check it, but I saw the tiny light pulsing under his hand. The crash sounded like metal folding, and everyone around us turned. A high, sharp yelp cut through the usual park noise. My husband dropped his water bottle and bolted toward the path. By the time my brain caught up, he was already kneeling beside her. I stood there for a second longer than I should have, and I still hate that pause. She was on the ground with one leg twisted under the bike. Her hands shook as she tried to push herself up. Don't move yet, he told her, one arm already under her shoulders. She froze, breathing fast, staring at him like he was the only thing in focus. I walked over slower than him, trying not to look as useless as I felt. Her jeans were torn at the knee, and blood slid down her calf. I remember that more than her face at first. She laughed once, short and shaky, like she was apologizing with sound. Wow, that was dramatic, she muttered, trying to sound tough. I heard the tremor in it, and it made my own chest tighten. Any pain in your head? He asked, hands steady on her arm. Little dizzy, mostly my pride, she joked, wiping at her cheek. I hovered by her bike, pretending I was guarding it from strangers. Truth was, I had no clue where to put my hands or my eyes. He was already in caretaker mode, and I was background. Can you wiggle your toes? He asked, tapping her sneaker lightly. She did, grimaced, then tried to sit straighter. Okay, good sign, he said, that calm tone I knew so well. He used it on me when I was sick or stressed or spinning out. Hearing it on her pressed something small and sharp right under my ribs. I'm fine, really, she insisted, pushing his arm away halfway. Then she tried to stand, and her leg nearly buckled. He grabbed her by the waist without thinking, pulling her upright. Her hand landed on his shoulder, fingers digging in for balance. For a split second they were chest to chest, and I felt invisible. Easy, just breathe, he told her, staying close. She stared down at the scrape, lips pressed tight in annoyance. Great, I finally ride outside and I eat the pavement, she said. She shook her head once, angry at herself more than anything. I recognized that look, the one that hates weakness more than pain. Do you want an ambulance? I asked, finally forcing my voice out. Both of them glanced at me like they had forgotten I existed. Her eyes flicked over, wide and embarrassed, cheeks flushed. No, I don't need all that, she answered quickly, shaking her head. Her pride spoke first, and he smiled like that made her brave. Car nearby? He asked, adjusting his grip on her arm. Yeah, parking lot up by the trees, she answered, gesturing vaguely. She tried to put more weight on the injured leg and winced. He shifted closer, taking more of her weight without a word. I trailed on the other side, hands still empty, heart not so much. We started walking, slow, uneven steps toward the lot. He asked questions as they moved, keeping her talking. Any nausea, any blurred vision? any weird feeling in her neck. She answered between tight laughs, insisting she was just clumsy. I walked half a step behind, listening to their new rhythm. "First day back on a bike in years," she said. "Guess I picked the dramatic way to reintroduce myself." "You picked the memorable way," he replied, mouth quirking up. Her smile at that line stuck in my brain longer than I wanted. Later, that exact kind of smile would show up in texts. At her car, he helped her lean against the door. "Let me see that knee again," he said, crouching down. She rolled the fabric higher, revealing the full scrape. It was messy and raw, definitely not a simple little nick. He winced on reflex, which somehow made her grin. "Yeah, that looks rough," he admitted, reaching for his phone. "You should probably get that cleaned properly, maybe urgent care." She groaned softly, tipping her head back against the metal. "Fantastic, I already hated doctors," she muttered under her breath. He chuckled, and the sound eased her shoulders in a way I noticed. "I can drive myself," she added quickly, seeing his concern. "I'm not letting you drive alone if you feel lightheaded," he said. He looked over at me then, finally including me in his plan. "I'll follow behind if she insists on driving," he suggested. So kind, so considerate, so completely focused on the stranger. I nodded because what else was I supposed to do in that moment? Say no, let her wobble out of the lot by herself. She glanced between us, catching that tiny silent exchange. "Honestly, I think I'll be okay once I sit down," she said. Her mouth said okay, her eyes said please do not leave me alone. "Here's an idea," he said, holding his phone up halfway. "If you'd rather not involve strangers, at least text when you get home." She blinked, surprised by the offer, then smiled slowly. "That's very sweet," she replied, reaching for her own phone. My stomach did a small, strange flip, and I pretended it was nothing. She unlocked her screen, fingers shaking slightly. "What's your number?" she asked, ready to type. He recited it, steady and easy like he'd done this 1,000 times. My name did not come up even once in that exchange. It should have, and the fact that it didn't lodged itself in my memory. After she saved it, he held out his hand. "I'll text you first so you know it's me," he offered. Her thumbs tapped quickly, sending herself a test message. A little ping came from his pocket a second later. That sound felt louder than the earlier crash to me. She introduced herself then, like this was a normal meeting. "Claire," she said, putting her hand in his for a quick shake. He repeated the name, just testing it in his mouth. I heard the echo of it in the air and did not love it. Names stick, you never know which one will haunt you later. She looked at me next with an apologetic half smile. "I'm not trying to steal your afternoon," she said. "Thank you for letting him help, that was really kind." Her voice was soft but direct, like she understood the weirdness. I told her it was no problem, and part of me meant it. We watched her slide into the driver's seat, moving carefully. He stayed by the door until she secured the belt. "Remember, if you feel sick, pull over and call someone," he reminded. "Got it, I promise I'll text when I get there," she answered. They held eye contact one beat longer than necessary, and I noticed. She drove off slowly, turning out of the lot. He opened his messages right away, checking his screen. "She already sent a thank you," he laughed, showing me quickly. Just a short line about being grateful and feeling embarrassed. I forced a small smile, then filed the entire moment in the back of my mind. Back then I told myself it was a decent deed, nothing more. A stranger fell, we happened to be nearby, we helped. That was the story I chose because it sounded clean. I did not yet know how often her name would light up our evenings. That afternoon was supposed to end in that parking lot, but it didn't. His phone chimed during breakfast and he smiled before looking. I already knew whose name would be there. He tapped the screen once and snorted into his coffee. "Claire just sent a picture of her bandage upgrade," he said, amused. He slid the phone across the table like this was a group activity. On the screen was her knee wrapped in fresh gauze. She had written, "Leveled up my crash armor 10 out of 10. I laughed once, short and careful, and felt weirdly out of sync. "She's funny, right?" he asked while taking the phone back. "Yeah, she seems pretty upbeat about eating pavement," I answered. He grinned wider and typed something with quick, confident thumbs. The sound of each tap hit harder than the little joke. That first week, he read a lot of their messages out loud. It felt almost wholesome in a way I tried to believe. He called her Bike Girl with this light tone that sounded harmless. I told myself it was better than him hiding the whole thing. He would finish work and drop onto the couch beside me. Phone in one hand, remote in the other, attention split. Checking on Claire's knee, she tried riding around the block again. He said it like a small update about the weather, nothing heavy. At first I joined in and asked how she was doing. He would scroll up and show me her short, nervous messages. I made it to the corner without panicking. Progress, she wrote once. I heard myself say, tell her I am cheering for her too, like it was natural. He actually typed it, or at least something close to it. There, now you're officially part of the recovery team, he joked. That line made me feel included for maybe half a day. Then their conversations started drifting away from that simple topic. It shifted fast from injuries to daily stuff that had nothing to do with bikes. She texted him during his commute, little comments about songs or traffic. He started saying things like, "Oh, Claire told me about that podcast." The way he said her name sounded easy, practiced, already settled in. One night we were scrolling through shows, arguing about what to watch. His phone lit up with a long notification that took 2 lines. He glanced down, and whatever we were talking about vanished from his face. Hold on, Claire had a terrible day, he murmured, already reading. I watched him lean forward slightly, elbows on his knees, phone close. His eyes narrowed in that focused way he usually saved for serious news. I could see only bits of the message, like worst meeting ever and idiot boss. He started typing slower this time, pausing like every sentence mattered. What's going on? I asked, trying not to sound needy or dramatic. He rubbed his jaw once, then kept his focus on the screen. She had a rough work situation, kind of a rant, he answered. Then he added, I'll tell you later, which stung more than I expected. You know that tiny phrase that splits people into inside and outside? That was it for me in that moment. He and Claire had a conversation I was not invited into. I sat 2 feet away and somehow felt miles off. The first time he mentioned meeting her for coffee, it sounded casual. Claire wants to show she can sit on a bike again without freaking, he said. She suggested grabbing coffee near the trail to celebrate tiny progress. He looked at me like he was half asking, half assuming I was fine. I heard my own voice answer before I fully processed how I felt. That could be nice, maybe I'll come too, I offered. His eyebrows lifted just a little, like he had not expected that. Yeah, sure, you should come hang out for a bit, he replied. I tried to treat it like meeting any new acquaintance, nothing deeper. The day of the coffee, my stomach acted like I had an exam. On the drive there, he talked about her stories from work, little highlights. He laughed at things I had never heard about because they lived in their chat. We walked into the place, and I spotted her at a corner table. She waved with both hands, bright and eager, like we were old friends. You must be Emily, she said, standing up a little too fast. Her gaze landed on me first this time, which helped more than I expected. She thanked me again for sharing my hero after the fall. The phrase sounded rehearsed, like she had practiced it on the way. I smiled and told her I was glad she was okay, which was true. What I did not add was that I still pictured her leg twisted on the ground. They eased into their usual rhythm almost immediately, I could feel it. They joked about her wobbling starts, tiny rides around her block. He teased her about overthinking every turn, and she teased him back. They moved like a conversation they had already rehearsed without me. Every time I joined in, the energy shifted slightly and then reset. I asked about her job and where she lived and normal things. She answered politely, even warmly, but always looped back to him. You know how he is, he keeps telling me to breathe, she laughed. Hearing you know how he is from someone else cracked something in me. That phrase belonged to people who had history with him, not strangers. I watched her mimic his calming tone, and he laughed at her impression. For a second they looked like they had their own tiny show going. At one point she checked her phone and gave a little sigh. My coworker just sent another dumb update. I swear I need a new team, she muttered. He leaned in, curious, asking follow-up questions about a person I had never heard of. I sat there stirring my drink, listening to them build a world I did not live in. To be fair, she was charming and genuinely grateful and easy to talk to. That almost made it worse, honestly, because I could not hate her outright. If she had been rude, I would have known what to do with that. Instead, I was stuck in this odd space between liking her and fearing her. After about an hour, Claire checked the time and cleared her throat. I should head out before I talk myself into quitting on the spot, she joked. She stood up and winced slightly when she straightened the healing leg. He noticed right away and reached out automatically, hand near her elbow. I'm good, she said, waving off the help with a quick smile. Thank you again, both of you, for everything, she added, looking at us. Her eyes lingered on him a second longer, and I clocked it. Small things, Elle. Like that stick when you already feel off balance. On the way back to the car, he seemed lighter than when we arrived. That went well, right? He asked, almost buzzing with relief. She's not as nervous in person as she sounded in messages, he added. I told myself I was relieved too, and part of me really was. For a little while after that, I relaxed more around the whole situation. He still checked his phone often, but I knew her face and voice now. It felt less like a shadow and more like an actual human being. I thought maybe this would settle into a normal, harmless friendship. Then the first Without You coffee slipped into the schedule. It happened on a random Wednesday when I was buried in work. He poked his head into the room and jingled his keys lightly. I'm meeting Claire near the trail. She wants to ride a short loop, he said. I paused mid-email and looked up at him, hands still on the keyboard. How long will you be out? I asked, trying to sound curious, not clingy. Couple hours at most, we're just grabbing something and doing a lap, he replied. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, already halfway gone in his head. I told him to drive safe and went back to my laptop. The words on the screen blurred together after a few minutes. His location popped in my imagination, picture after picture of them laughing. I checked the time every 15 minutes, like I was tracking a delivery. He sent one picture from the meetup, both of them standing by the path. She held up her bike with one hand and gave a victory gesture. He wrote, "Look who made it around once without freaking out," under it. I typed back, "Nice job, proud of both of you," and stared at the screen. That message looked supportive and cool and very composed. Inside, I was wondering why my throat felt tight over a simple outing. He did not reply to my text until much later, just a short heart. By then, the heavy feeling in my chest had already settled in. He returned home flushed from moving and smelling like outside air. Claire handled the turns like a champ. She's improving fast, he said. He ran through the details, laughing at specific moments I could not picture. Every "we" that came out of his mouth rang louder than the story itself. Over the next couple weeks, their jokes got more layered and fast. They referenced things from calls and messages that I had not witnessed. He would chuckle at something on his phone and say, "Inside joke, sorry." That phrase felt like a door closing right in front of my face. I noticed he started using little phrases I had never heard from him before. Expressions that sounded exactly like things she had said at the cafe. They slipped into our conversations like they belonged there. Hearing her words in his voice felt like finding someone else's clothes in our drawer. Water hammered the shower walls, and his phone buzzed on the dresser. The sound kept repeating, short and sharp, like it wanted my attention. He had tossed his keys down, dropped a quick kiss on my cheek, then vanished. No real conversation, just, "Ride went long, I need to rinse off." I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at that glowing screen. He was late, much later than he promised earlier. His message had said, "Quick ride with Claire, back in a couple hours." Couple turned into 3, then almost 4, while my imagination did laps. By the time he walked in, his shirt clung to him, hair damp with sweat. He avoided my eyes just enough for my stomach to tighten. Now the door to the bathroom was closed, fan humming above the water. His phone vibrated again, skidding slightly on the wood. I watched it like it might bite me if I reached for it. You ever sit there and argue with yourself over one tiny action? That was me, hands on my knees, heart beating way too fast. Another notification popped up, preview flashing across the top. I didn't catch the words, just the contact name. Claire. Of course. My chest did that stupid squeeze thing, half dread, half curiosity. I stood up before I really decided to. My fingers hovered over the phone without touching it. We knew each other's passcodes, that had always been true. In my head, that meant we were safe, not that we actually checked. Tonight, that security blanket turned into a dare. The phone buzzed again, shorter this time, like a nudge. I could hear him singing under the water, off-key and relaxed. He had no idea I was standing here, fighting with myself. I told myself I just wanted to be sure nothing was out of line. That was the story I used to justify the next thing I did. I picked it up and it was warm from his hand. My thumb slid over the screen and it woke up for me. The lock screen showed one new message from her. Under her name it read, "I still feel that hug." My throat went dry so fast it almost hurt. I unlocked it before I could chicken out. His home screen flashed, then the messaging app opened under my thumb. The thread with Claire sat at the top, bold and crowded. I tapped it and the screen filled with their day. The first thing I saw was my own name written by him. "Emily's in a mood again, I think I stressed her out earlier." Just that one line knocked the air out of me. My first instinct was to defend myself in my own head. I had not raised my voice, I had not snapped or slammed anything. I had asked one question about how often they were riding together. I scrolled up, needing context, needing it to somehow soften this. There they were, talking before the ride, planning the meetup. She wrote, "I don't know why I feel safer when you're around." He answered, "Because I get you, and I'm not judging you." That "I get you" landed like a punch I never saw coming. They joked about the route, about how many miles she could handle. She called him her training buddy with a smiling emoji. He replied, "I'll always cheer for you, don't worry." I thought I was the one with that guarantee, apparently not. The shower kept running, covering the little sound of my breathing. I forced myself to scroll higher, even though I already felt sick. There was a message from an hour before he came home. She wrote, "Thank you for sitting with me on that bench after." My eyes skimmed ahead, palms slick around the phone. I had not heard anything about a bench. His response was long, longer than most of what he wrote to me lately. He had sent, "You were shaking, I wasn't going to leave you like that." Then, "You are stronger than you think, you just needed someone in your corner." Reading those words aimed at her made something twist deep inside me. I used to be the only one he talked to like that. Below that message she had replied fast. "I really do feel safe with you, which is wild." Then another line, "That hug at the end helped, sorry I clung so long." My vision blurred for a second and then snapped back sharp. There it was, the thing I had not asked about yet. My thumb hovered over his answer and I almost stopped. I kept going because at that point stopping felt worse. He had written, "It's okay, you needed comfort, it wasn't weird." Then he added, "Let's keep that between us though, she worries already." I actually whispered wow out loud, alone in our bedroom. The water pressure changed, like he had turned the knob slightly. I jerked my head toward the door, heart slamming against my ribs. He hummed a line from some song, completely unaware. I turned the volume down on the phone, just in case. Then I went back to the message that used me as an excuse. "Let's keep that between us though, she worries already." So I was not crazy, I was not dramatic, I was correct. I was worried because my husband had private hugs with another woman. And his solution was not to pull back, it was to hide it better. That realization landed heavy and stayed. I scrolled down to the latest part of their thread. Right before he stepped in the shower, they were still talking. He wrote, "Home now, thanks for today, I liked our talk." She answered, "Me too, I feel lighter after unloading on you." Then the last one, the one I glimpsed earlier. "I still feel that hug." 4 words that did not belong anywhere near my marriage. I checked the timestamp and did quick mental math. He had texted that while standing in our hallway, shoes still on. He had one foot in her emotional world and one in mine. For a second I honestly thought about dropping the phone. Just let it slide onto the bed and pretend I never saw anything. You know, that desperate urge to unknow something. To roll history back 10 minutes and go back to ignorant comfort. I felt that urge full force and I still kept reading. Higher up in the chat, I started spotting more of my name. Wish Emily didn't shut down whenever I bring up feelings, he wrote. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I replayed our last argument in my head, checking the memory. I remembered pausing to think, and I guessed he labeled it shutting down. She replied, maybe she doesn't know how to share with you anymore. Then you listened so well with me, maybe you're different with her. I actually said, are you kidding me, under my breath. My hands shook and I had to steady the phone against my thigh. Two people were building a version of me I did not recognize. He had written back, I try with her but she thinks I'm overreacting. Then you're easier to talk to, you don't take everything personally. That line hit like a low blow from someone who knew where to aim. Because yes, by that point I was taking things personally. Kind of hard not to when your marriage is the topic of a side chat. Steam seeped from under the bathroom door, thick and curling. I imagined him rinsing his hair with zero idea this was happening. If he walked out right then, he would see his phone in my hands. We would skip the slow build and go straight into a full explosion. My poo. LSE raced at the thought, and still I did not put it down. I clicked on the search feature in the corner of the chat. I typed my own name into the field and hit search. Messages jumped through time, each result glowing in yellow. Little pieces of my life sliced up and served in single lines. I felt like I was eavesdropping on my own relationship from outside. One of the earliest results made my stomach flip. He had written, Emily actually thought it was cute I helped you. Then she likes that I'm being supportive. She answered, I don't want to mess things up for you too. At the time, she probably meant that, and maybe he believed it. Further down, another set of results painted a different picture. I didn't tell Emily we talked today, he had written on some random afternoon. Didn't feel like dealing with her questions. She replied, understandable, you deserve a space that's just yours. My brain stuck on that word, space, because it used to mean our home. It was not simply the hug on that bench or the ride. It was the pattern of turning toward her whenever something felt heavy. He would wrap our conflict in a neat line and present it to her. She would respond with comfort and validation, and he would soak it up. Meanwhile, I got the person who came home emptied out and distant. I knew I was cherry-picking the worst parts while reading. I also knew that was exactly what anyone would do in my spot. You do not scroll through those messages calmly and evenly. You hunt for landmines, for proof you are not losing your mind. In that search, you collect enough shrapnel to last years. Behind the door, the water shut off with a sudden stop. My whole body locked, fingers pressing into the case so hard it hurt. He cleared his throat and stepped onto the mat, the sound muffled. I snapped out of it and backed out of the chat to the home screen. My heart pounded everywhere, even in my fingers. Babe, where did I put my towel? His voice called through the door. I swallowed and forced my voice steady. On the hook closest one to you, I answered, staring at the phone. I heard the rod rattle, then a soft, annoyed grunt. Those tiny sounds made everything feel even more real. I placed his phone back exactly where he left it. Same angle, same distance from the lamp, like I was resetting evidence. Then I sat down, folded my hands, and tried to arrange my face. I had about 30 seconds to decide how much to reveal. Nothing about that choice felt simple or clean. The door opened and steam rolled into the room. He walked in with a towel wrapped around his waist, hair dripping. He rubbed his head and glanced at me, reading my posture. You okay? He asked, eyes narrowing just a fraction. I forced my shoulders to loosen so I would not scream. Yeah, just tired, I answered, picking at a loose thread on the blanket. The lie tasted awful, but the truth felt too heavy for that second. Part of me wanted to throw the phone at him and demand explanations. Another part wanted to watch a dumb show and pretend for one more night. Cowardice and self-preservation can look very similar from the inside. He walked over to the dresser, grabbed the phone, and checked the screen. I watched his expression, waiting for the flicker that would betray him. If he noticed the unlocked state or the cleared notifications, he hid it. His face stayed neutral as he typed something quick with one thumb. I knew exactly which chat he was opening without even seeing. My mind ran a silent commentary as I watched that little moment. He is telling her he is home. He is telling her he had a nice time. Maybe he is sending another message about my mood. Each possible line made my jaw tighten more. Claire got home okay earlier, he said, putting the phone down again. He moved to his side of the bed, casual, almost lazy. She texted that she felt calmer after we talked on the trail, he added. He said it like that talk was a public, normal thing. He left out the part where he promised to keep things from me. Must be nice to have someone you can vent to, I answered. The words came out cooler than I planned. He paused, one knee on the mattress, and looked over at me. You have me for that too, you know that, right? He asked. I met his eyes and almost laughed at the irony. Do I asked, tilting my head slightly. Because that is not what his messages suggested. His forehead creased, not deep, just enough to show irritation. Where is this coming from? He asked, voice dipping lower. There it was, the opening to a fight I was not ready to start. I could have brought it all up right there. The hug, the keep it between us, the way he described me. I imagined holding the phone out, evidence glowing bright. I imagined him scrambling for excuses or turning it back on me. None of those scenes ended with peace. Instead, I shrugged, the most cowardly move I could pick. Forget it, I'm just worn out. I muttered, looking away. He watched me for another second, then let it drop. At least he pretended to let it drop. The tension slipped under the surface like a rip current. We went through the motions of getting ready for bed. Brushing teeth, pulling on sleep clothes, setting alarms. Every tiny routine suddenly felt fake, like props in a staged scene. He scrolled through his phone while I pretended to check mine. I kept seeing that line in my head over and over. Let's keep that between us though, she worries already. That single sentence rewrote the entire story of his friendship with her. It was no longer a simple act of kindness after a fall. It was a secret channel where I played the role of overbearing wife. He had handed me that script without my consent. When he finally rolled onto his side, he flicked off his screen. Long day, he mumbled, stretching an arm toward me. I lay there stiff, every nerve buzzing with information I never wanted. I let him rest his hand on my hip because refusing would raise questions. His touch felt familiar and foreign at the same time. He drifted off quickly, breathing deep and slow beside me. I stared at the ceiling, counting those breaths like they could calm me. My mind ran in circles, stopping always at the same ugly image. Him on that bench with her, arms around someone who was not me. It was not what he did physically that kept me awake. It was the version of me he built in his messages. Cold, hard to talk to, always worried for no reason. The more I replayed those lines, the smaller I felt in my own life. He had created a relationship where he was the understanding hero. And I was the problem that needed to be managed off-screen. Lying there, I made myself a quiet promise. I would not let that script stay unchallenged forever. Maybe not tonight, maybe not in this exact moment. But I would drag that hidden story into the light at some point. I just did not yet know how much damage that light would show. I slid his phone across the table so hard it rattled. We are not going to bed until we talk about this. He froze with a fork halfway to his mouth. The screen lit up between us, Claire's chat still at the top. His eyes dropped to the screen, then back to my face. You went through my messages, he said, voice low and sharp. You went through our marriage in those messages, I answered. My hands shook, so I pressed them flat against my thighs. For a second, we just stared at each other across the table. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the clock. I forced the words out before I lost my nerve. I saw everything between you and Claire, every line. He leaned back slowly, chest rising, jaw tight. Everything is a big word, he muttered, rubbing his temple. You were venting, I get that, this is more than venting. I jabbed a finger toward the phone like it had teeth. You talked about me like I was some burden you tolerated. My voice cracked on that word which I hated. You made me sound cold, controlling, impossible to talk to. He flinched at each label, which almost gave me satisfaction. That's not fair, I never called you impossible, he protested. You didn't need the exact word, you painted the picture. I heard my own laugh and realized it sounded nothing like laughter. Apparently I shut down, I overreact, I worry for no reason. He shoved his chair back a little and stood. This is exactly why I didn't want you in there, he snapped. You twist everything into the worst case interpretation. I stood too because sitting made me feel small. The worst case interpretation is that you hid things, I shot back. You hugged her on that bench and decided I couldn't handle it. He went very still when I said hug. There it was, the hit. How much did you read? He asked, voice quieter now. Enough to know there are two versions of me, I answered. The one who actually lives here, and the one you described to her. I swallowed hard, throat raw, guess which one she knows. He rubbed his hands over his face, dragging them down slowly. I was frustrated, okay, I needed someone neutral for once. She's not neutral when you half flirt with her in the process. The words slipped out before I softened them, I did not take them back. He laughed once, short and ugly. I am not flirting with her, he insisted, shaking his head. You told her you liked sitting with her after she shook. You told her she made you feel understood, I replied. That is human kindness, not romance, he argued, pacing now. He ran a hand through his hair, sending droplets onto the floor. Not everything has to be some grand betrayal. So why did you ask her to keep things between you? I asked. His mouth opened then closed, no answer ready. I saw you tell her not to mention certain stuff, I continued. You protected her comfort at the expense of my reality. I took a step closer, you knew exactly what you are doing. He grabbed the back of his chair, knuckles pale. She was panicking, she needed a place to feel safe. And I needed a husband who didn't create a separate emotional life. The words hit both of us at the same time. He exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping a little. It is not a separate life, he tried again. We ride together, she talks, I listen, that's it. You also complain about your wife and accept long hugs, I added. He winced, then picked up the phone and locked it. I never slept with her, he said, suddenly very clear. I never took her to a hotel or anything like that. I stared at him and realized he was aiming under the bar. I did not ask if you slept with her, I replied. Funny that you jumped there on your own. His eyes darted away for half a second. That half second told me more than another hour of arguing. We went in circles for a while, voices climbing then dropping. He kept repeating that nothing real had happened. I kept repeating that this already felt real enough to hurt. We were not even talking about the same kind of damage. At one point I slammed my palm on the table. Answer this straight, I demanded, leaning forward. If I had this kind of chat with some guy from the gym, would you call it nothing, or would you lose your mind? His jaw clenched again, teeth grinding. That's not the point, he muttered. That is exactly the point, I shot back. You call it support when you do it, betrayal when I imagine it. He opened his mouth again, then closed it with a hard swallow. I liked being useful to her, he finally admitted, voice low. She was messed up about the accident, I helped her push through. He looked at me with something like guilt under the defensiveness. And you couldn't stand the idea of being the bad guy, I said. Even in your own head, so you turned me into the overreactor. He shook his head, but not as strongly as before. I never wanted you to get hurt like this, he whispered. Intent doesn't change impact, I answered, softer but not forgiving. Whatever you meant to do, you still shredded my trust. We stood there breathing hard, both of us exhausted. The air between us felt heavier than any silence we had before. For a couple days after that, things went weirdly quiet. He muted his phone more often and left it face down. I watched him like I was studying an almost unknown person. We tiptoed around deep topics, just managing schedules and chores. I half expected Claire to vanish from our lives after that blow-up. Honestly, part of me prayed for it in a petty way. If she backed off, I could blame her completely and move on. Life rarely lines up with the easy narrative, though. 3 days later, I got the message I never anticipated. It wasn't from him. It was from her. A number I recognized from his screen, popping up on mine. Hi, this is Claire, I hope it's okay I'm reaching out. I just stared at the text, brain lagging behind. How did you get my number? Was my first thought. Then I remembered he had grouped us once for a ride update. The next line came before I replied. I think there's tension because of me. I'd really like to talk. My stomach clenched in a completely different way now. Part dread, part curiosity, part I might throw up. I paced the kitchen with the phone in my hand. Every step sounded loud in the quiet house. He was at work, no way to consult him even if I wanted to. And honestly, I didn't want his input on this one. At first I considered ignoring her entirely. Delete the message, pretend it never landed. But I kept picturing that hidden bench scene I had never seen. And the way he framed me in those conversations. I typed out, what do you want to talk about? My thumb hovered over send for a long second. Then I hit it before I could chicken out again. The reply started appearing almost instantly, 3 dots pulsing. If you're up for it, I'd like to meet in person. I feel weird texting about this, coffee somewhere public. I blew out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Of course she suggested coffee, their favorite format. I stared at the invitation, all kinds of scenarios firing off. She could show up and play dumb, act innocent. She could attack me for overreacting and defend him. Or she could tell me something he hadn't dared to say. Where, I wrote back, keeping it short on purpose. We picked a place halfway between our usual spots. Neutral ground, at least on paper. Nothing about it felt neutral in my body. I didn't tell him about the meeting when he got home. I watched him move through the evening, strangely careful. He seemed more attentive, like he could feel something shifting. But he never asked the one question that mattered. The next day, I arrived early and took a table near the window. My hands could not stay still, so I wrapped them around my cup. Every person who walked through the door made my heart jump. When she finally entered, I knew right away. She spotted me quickly and lifted her hand in a small wave. No big smile this time, just a tight attempt. She walked over and stopped at the edge of the table. Thank you for meeting me, she said, voice steady but soft. I nodded and gestured to the chair across from me. We might as well get this over with, I answered. She sat down, set her phone face down beside her drink. That small move told me she at least understood something about optics. For a moment we just studied each other, sizing up the damage. I saw the faint scar on her knee under the fabric. She saw whatever lived on my face now, probably exhaustion. Her gaze dropped first. I'm guessing you went through your husband's phone, she started. There was no accusation in it, just a statement. I did, I replied, not bothering to deny or justify. I read your conversations, most of them. She nodded slowly, eyes closing briefly. Then you already hate me, she said quietly. I let the words hang there because I wanted to answer honestly. I don't know if hate is the right word yet, I replied. A humorless smile flickered over her mouth. That's almost generous, she murmured. She took a breath, shoulders rising, then looked straight at me. I'm not here to steal your husband, she said. I felt something spike in my chest at those words. Part anger, part disbelief, part bitter amusement. People who aren't stealing usually don't need to say that out loud, I answered. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away this time. Fair, she admitted. I deserve some of that, probably a lot of it. She tapped one finger against the cup, restless. I just don't want you to only know the version of me from his stories. That choice of phrase stabbed in a new spot. Interesting, I said, because I've mostly known the version of me. The one you two built together behind my back. Her shoulders slumped a little at that. I read where you weighed in about my personality, I went on. How I supposedly avoid sharing feelings, how he listens better with you. I watched guilt wash over her face in real time. It didn't fix anything, but it mattered. I was wrong to speculate about you, she said. That part is not defensible, I got carried away. She lifted her eyes again, sincerity hitting almost too hard. I should have refused to talk about your marriage like that. I wasn't expecting that level of directness, to be honest. I was ready for denial or excuses or deflection. Instead, she lined herself up in front of the bullet. It threw me off just enough to soften my jaw. Did you know he asked me to keep things from you? I asked. Her eyebrows tightened and she nodded once. Yes, I knew he didn't tell you everything about the rides, she admitted. I knew about the bench and the hug. There it was, spoken out loud for the first time in the same room. I gripped my cup harder so I wouldn't cross my arms. Was that hug as long as it sounded? I asked carefully. She took a second before answering, which told me enough. I was shaking, she said. I cried a little. He put his arms around me. I held on. Her voice roughened near the end. I shouldn't have stayed that close that long. That part is on me. He could have stepped back, I pointed out. He is not a statue, he had options. She nodded again, no argument this time. You're right, he could have, he didn't. Silence sat between us for a minute. I watched her pick at the rim of the cup. My anger kept trying to sharpen, but something else joined it. This was messy, and my brain hated messy narratives. She inhaled slowly, then dropped the bigger weight. There was one kiss, she said. The words landed like a dropped glass between us. Short, loud, irreversible. My ears rang for a second. I stared at her, trying to process syllables that simple. When I managed my voice lower than before. Was it before or after the bench? After, she answered, eyes wet now. Same day when we were leaving the trail. She swallowed and looked straight at me. I kissed him, it was quick, he pulled away. The room blurred at the edges for a moment. I focused on her face so I wouldn't drift. What do you mean quick? I asked. I need you to be very specific here. She nodded, almost like she expected that. We hugged goodbye near the parking lot, she said. I was overwhelmed, grateful, too attached. I leaned up. Our mouths touched for maybe a second, maybe two. And then I pushed voice tighter. He stepped back, he told me he loved you. She blinked hard, one tear finally sliding down. I felt like an idiot instantly. I apologized. My heart did a weird, complicated thing at that detail. Relief and disgust mixed together and made something new. So he stopped it, I repeated slowly. He actually said the words out loud. Yes, she confirmed. He told me this could not happen again, that he crossed a line too. She twisted at a napkin between her fingers, shredding the edge. I told him I would back off, then I didn't back off enough. I sat back a little, the chair creaking under the shift. My brain reeled through everything I had seen and heard. The secret hug, the hidden complaints, now this one small kiss. Small in time, huge in meaning. Has anything else physical happened? I asked. My voice had gone strange, almost level. She shook her head quickly, almost desperate to answer. No, that was it, I swear, no hotel rooms, no hidden weekends. I studied her body language, every tiny twitch. She looked wrecked and not in a performative way. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it influenced how it landed. People can hurt you and still regret it sincerely. Why are you telling me this? I finally asked. Because he didn't, she replied, instant and blunt. I asked if he would, he said he was handling it. Her mouth twisted on that last word. I realized he might spin the story to save face, she added. I didn't want you walking around thinking you were crazy. Hearing that from her was almost as painful as the confession. I had needed someone to say that for weeks, just not her. You know this does not exactly clear your conscience, I said. I know, she answered, no attempt to defend. I crossed major lines with a married man who helped me once. She looked at me with something like shame and respect combined. I started relying on him for way too much, she continued. I liked the attention and the support and the inside jokes. She winced at her own words. I noticed when your name popped up less in his stories. That sentence hit harder than I wanted it to. So you knew you were taking space that used to be mine, I said. Yes, she answered quietly. I didn't stop. I told myself it was harmless because we weren't sleeping together. I let that sink in between us, heavy and ugly. Emotional cheating doesn't require a bed, I replied. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away this time. I get that now, deeply, too late, but I get it. We sat there for a while, just breathing through it. I tried to picture the exact moment in that parking lot. Her leaning in, him freezing, then stepping back. I felt sick and weirdly grateful at the same time. Have you talked to him since you decided to tell me? I asked. No, she said. I wanted to talk to you first, then I planned to block him. She wiped under one eye with the back of her hand. You're going to cut him off just like that? I asked. She gave a broken laugh at that. This friendship is not sustainable, that is obvious now, she said. I clung to the idea that I could keep the good parts. I can't. For the first time since meeting her, I believed she might actually disappear. That didn't automatically fix my life, but it shifted something. If she stepped away, I'd be left alone with the man who lied. Which was its own kind of terrifying. I'm not telling you what to do with your marriage, she added. That is not my place at all. She leaned forward slightly, but you deserve the full truth. That line echoed in my head because it was the opposite of his approach. I almost asked her if she was in love with him. The question hovered on the edge of my tongue. In the end, I didn't say it out loud. Some answers I was not ready to carry, not yet. Instead, I asked something else. Did he ever talk about leaving me? I said. Her eyes widened, then softened with something like pity. No, he never said that, not once. That answer did not comfort me as much as she probably hoped. Staying physically while shifting emotionally still counts as leaving halfway. He had not planned to walk out the door. He had slowly stepped out of the role I thought he held. We wrapped up the conversation without some dramatic scene. No shouting, no thrown drinks. Just two women who had both participated in the same mess. One from inside the marriage, one from the side. When we stood up, she paused with her chair half pushed in. For whatever it's worth, I am truly sorry, she said. I liked him a lot, probably more than I admitted, that's on me. She met my gaze one last time. I hope you get whatever piece you choose. I walked out into the parking lot feeling like my legs weren't attached right. The air felt too thin, every sound a little too sharp. I sat in my car and gripped the wheel without starting the engine. Then I finally let myself cry in a way I hadn't at home. I wasn't just mourning the kiss or the messages or the hug. I was mourning the version of us I thought we still were. The story where we would laugh about Bike Girl years from now. Instead, she had become a chapter I could never unread. On the drive back, one thought kept looping through my mind. He gave me his revised version of events. She gave me hers with the ugly parts intact. Now I had to decide which version of myself would walk through our front door. I walked through the door and he was already standing in the hallway. Shoes on, keys in his hand. Like he had been pacing and sat back down a second before I arrived. He looked at my face once and his grip tightened around the metal. Where were you? He asked, voice too casual for his eyes. I dropped my bag by the wall, fingers stiff. Talking to Claire, I answered, watching the word hit him. The keys slipped from his hand and clattered on the floor. He stared at me for a beat, jaw clenched. You met with her? He asked, taking a step closer. In person without telling me. I almost laughed because the hypocrisy was almost impressive. You're upset I didn't give you a heads up, I said. Do you want to guess how that sounds right now? He opened his mouth, then shut it, eyes flicking to the living room. Okay, what did she say? He asked finally, voice tighter. I moved past him and into the room, needing space. He followed, staying a few feet back like I might explode. She told me there was a kiss, I said. His shoulders jerked like I had hit him with something solid. The room went quiet in a weird, heavy way. He blinked once, slow, like he needed a second to process. She told you that, he murmured, more to himself than to me. So it did happen, I pushed, not giving him any room. His hand went through his hair, fingers shaking now. Yeah, he answered, barely above normal volume. There was a moment after a ride she leaned in. My heart still dropped even though I already knew. How long would you have taken to mention that? I asked. Another week, another year, never. He shut his eyes like maybe darkness would help him think. I was going to tell you, he said, and I almost walked out. You had plenty of chances, I replied, heat rising in my face. During every single argument about boundaries and secrets. You let me fight you with half the information, I added. That is not forgetfulness, that is strategy. He sank down onto the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees. I panicked, he said, staring at the floor between his feet. It happened fast, I pulled back, I thought that made it different. I inhaled sharply because there it was again, the low bar. You thought stopping after your mouth's touch erased it, I asked. He looked up quickly, guilt written all over his face. I kept telling myself it didn't count like the big stuff, he said. That it was one bad second, not a whole betrayal. I let out a rough breath, part laugh, part something else. Congratulations, I said. You managed to pick the worst possible framework. You weighed my sanity against your discomfort and I lost. He flinched like each word scored a mark. She made it sound like you told her you loved me, I continued. In that parking lot right after. He nodded once, ashamed and proud at the same time. I did because it's true, he said, eyes locked on mine. That line does not land the way you think it does, I answered. You kissed someone else and then used me as proof of your morals. That is not romantic, that is damage control, I added. He swallowed, throat working, no quick answer ready. For a moment neither of us spoke. I could hear a car starting outside, the world still moving. Inside this room, time stretched around the two of us. I felt weirdly calm, like the storm had passed through me already. I blocked her, he said suddenly, grabbing his phone. He held it up like a peace offering. I can show you, I ended it after that day, I swear. He unlocked the screen with fumbling fingers. He opened the chat and scrolled to the top. Her name was grayed out with a tiny label under it. Blocked. The thread still sat there, full of every line that cut me. I should have done this sooner, he admitted, staring down. I kept telling myself it was under control, that I had rules. He shook his head at his own words. Clearly I was not as in control as I thought. Blocking her now doesn't rewind anything, I said. It just stops you from digging deeper. He looked up like a cornered animal. So where does that leave us, he asked. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. You want to jump straight to a relationship status update, I asked. I am still standing in the fire, you want to talk labels. His lips parted, then pressed together, trying not to push. He took a slower breath and tried again. I messed this up, he said, a lot in different ways. I don't want to lose you over my own stupidity. The word lose hit some old soft place anyway. Do you understand why this didn't feel small? I asked. He nodded, then shook his head, then nodded again. I think I do now, he said, voice rough. I turned our issues into entertainment for someone else. That line almost surprised me because it sounded honest. He rubbed his eyes with his knuckles, like he was trying to wake up. I liked how she looked at me, he continued quietly. Like I was capable, wise, uncomplicated. And how do I look at you? I asked. My question hung between us, heavy and sharp. He met my gaze without running this time. Like you know me, all of me, which is harder, he answered. That hurt too, but in a way I recognized. Knowing someone fully is not soft and easy all the time. It shows every crack, every petty part, every lazy instinct. He had found someone who only saw the cleaned up edit. I want counseling, he said suddenly. Both of us together, with someone who knows what they're doing. He sat forward, hands open in front of him. I will go alone too if that's what it takes. A few months earlier, that offer might have landed like a lifeline. Now it felt like a fire extinguisher handed over after the house caught. I believed he meant it in that moment. I also knew desperation can sound a lot like clarity. I'm not making decisions while shaken like this, I answered. His shoulders sagged, but he didn't argue that point. I need distance from you to even hear myself think, I added. The word distance seemed to hit him harder than kiss did. What does that mean? He asked slowly. You want me to stay with a friend for a while? Or are you talking about something else? His fingers twisted together, restless and tense. I looked around the room, really seeing it. Not as our shared space, but as a place full of history. Every object had some story behind it for us. Suddenly, it felt like a museum for a life that might be over. I'm going to pack a bag, I said. Not forever, not yet, but I can't breathe in here right now. He stood up so fast the couch creaked. Please don't go, rolled out of him like instinct. I am not walking out to punish you, I replied. I'm walking out so I don't abandon myself. That sentence sounded dramatic even to my own ears. It was also the clearest thought I had all day. He followed me down the hall, stopping in the doorway. Watching me pull the suitcase from under the bed. His voice came out hoarse. We can fix this if you stay, he said. I started folding clothes without looking at him. We can maybe fix this if I leave and think, I corrected. If I stay right now, every breath is going to be a fight. I don't want to hate you by next week, I added. He leaned his shoulder against the frame, eyes glossy. I already hate myself enough for both of us, he muttered. That used to be the kind of line that would pull me in. This time it just sounded like another weight he wanted me to hold. I need you to carry your own guilt for once, I said, without using my forgiveness as pain relief. He winced but nodded slowly like he knew I was right. Knowing and liking are not the same thing. I slipped my ring off and held it in my palm. The imprint on my finger looked pale and temporary. I turned and placed the ring on the dresser carefully. His eyes tracked the movement like it was in slow motion. You're taking it off, he whispered. I'm not throwing it away, I answered. I just can't keep it on like nothing happened. It feels heavy in the wrong way now, I added. His hands went into his hair again, gripping hard. I wish I could rewind to that day in the park, he said. Walk right past her and never stop. For once I did not jump in to make him feel better. I don't, I said, and that surprised both of us. He blinked, confused. You don't, he echoed. If you hadn't stopped, this part of you stays hidden, I explained. I'd still be living with a version of you that wasn't real. That truth burned on the way out. Sometimes awareness feels worse than ignorance, at least at first. But long run, I'd rather deal with what exists than a fantasy. Even when the real thing makes me want to leave my own house. He sat on the bed like his legs gave up. I will do anything you ask, he said quietly. Therapy, no phone, new job, new city if you want. The panic in his voice was almost more intense than the guilt. I don't want a new city, I answered. I want a partner who doesn't need a disaster to grow up. I zipped the bag and set it upright, wheels clicking. For once, I am not going to manage your evolution. We walked back to the living room in silence. The space looked the same, but it felt smaller around us. He stood near the door, fingers tapping against his leg. Where will you go? He asked finally. A friend's place, I replied. Guest room, enough privacy to breathe, enough company to not spiral. I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocking the screen. If you text, keep it about logistics for now, I added. His face crumpled a little at that restriction. You really want me to pretend we're roommates? He asked. I shook my head. We are not anything simple right now, I answered. That's why I need the space. Labels will catch up later. I reached for the handle, then paused with my hand on it. One more thing, always one more thing at the Threes. Hold. If you talk about this with anyone, I said, turning back. Tell the truth, don't turn me into the cartoon villain again. He looked almost offended. I won't trash you, he said immediately. I promise this is on me. You said that while still hiding parts before, I reminded him. Follow through this time, not just words. He nodded once, more serious than I had seen him in weeks. I'll start therapy next week whether you come back or not, he said. I need to understand why I let it get this far. That was probably the truest sentence in the room. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway air. He didn't reach to pull me back, and I respected that. He just stood there, hand braced against the wall, watching. His eyes looked like they were memorizing the shape of me leaving. Walking down those steps hurt in a way I can't fully explain. Every movement felt like choosing myself and hurting myself simultaneously. I kept going anyway, one foot, then the next, bag rolling behind. The sound of the wheels echoed more than it should have. In the car, I rested my forehead on the steering wheel for a moment. I let myself cry a little, not the loud collapsing kind. Just quiet tears that slipped out while I breathed. Then I wiped my face and started the engine. People ask how you know when something is truly broken. For me, it wasn't the kiss or the hug or the bike. It was realizing I had started disappearing inside my own story. And that staying would finish the job. I still care about him, and that is the twisted part. If he does the work, maybe one day we talk again. Maybe we build something new, or maybe we sign papers. Right now, none of that is my job to plan. My job is simple in theory and brutal in practice. Protect the pieces of myself that survived this whole thing. Stop handing my sanity to people who don't know how to hold it. So I drove away from our house, ring off, eyes forward.